You are listening to Spotlight Sessions with Justin Bamforth. The program provides an inside look at the creative field through exclusive conversations with industry professionals. Every episode is recorded live each month in the Adobe Creative Career Discord. Check out the show links to learn more and join for free. This episode was previously recorded before a live listening audience. My next guest is David Nakayama, a Honolulu-based freelance illustrator, concept artist, and art director whose work has become instantly recognizable across comics, games, and pop culture. David is best known for his striking cover art for various comic book publishers, including Marvel Comics, DC Comics, and a bunch of independent comic publishers as well, where he's illustrated covers for titles like The X-Men, Spider-Man, Catwoman, Wonder Woman, and Harley Quinn. But his art has also appeared across major entertainment brands and studios, including Epic Games, Wizards of the Coast, Capcom, and Transformers. But did you know that earlier in his career, David spent more than a decade in the video game industry as an art lead at Jam City, working on titles such as Harry Potter, Hogwarts Mystery, and Marvel Avengers Academy. And before that, he was working on the superhero MMO City of Heroes. But nowadays, he's one of the most recognizable comic artists working in comics today. And if you are a comic fan, you have probably seen his unique style and maybe even chatted with him at one of the many Comic-Cons he attends regularly. But today, he joins us in the Adobe Creative Career Discord for an exclusive one-on-one that you can only listen to live right here on Spotlight Sessions. David Nakayama, the man, the myth, the legend, welcome to the show.
Oh, wow. What an introduction. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. And you're amazing. The way what you just said made me feel like I'm on All Things Considered with Terry Gross or something. That was amazing.
Well, look, I currently have a copy of Emma Frost, the White Queen, sitting on my desk, and on it is your beautiful cover art. And next to that are some fairly recent issues of Catwoman that you also illustrated. So, chat, needless to say, if you're a comic fan like I am, David Nakayama is a household name with an extremely recognizable brand. But for anyone who doesn't yet know your work, how would you usually describe your unique visual style?
It's interesting. I would describe it as an intentional juxtaposition between traditional comic book line art and modern digital painting. And I fell into it backwards by having, tried to be a Jim Lee type penciler, starting out. And then once I got into games, that's not a thing. They don't do pencils. They do full color painting. So I had to sort of, learn very quickly how to do that. When I came back to comics, it sort of, it happened that I naturally combined the two and came up with what I think of it now as my modern style.
Do you have a name for this?
I should. Wouldn't that be a good branding idea? I don't have a special name for it, but it's that idea of the traditional and the modern digital coming together somehow. So if you've got a suggestion, let me know.
Let's talk about how you got your start in illustration, because there are a lot of people listening right now who look up to you and they think, how can I be a comic book artist? But what did that path actually look like for you?
Well, it's we were just alluding before the show started to how things were different back in the 90s when I was trying to get my first job. And it was very analog. The internet was just starting. You had to still go in person to comic conventions with a paper portfolio and show actual human beings your work in person. That was quite different. And it ended up sort of gatekeeping the jobs because you kind of had to be in America at an American convention to work for the American comic book industry. But all of that changed overnight with the internet, where all the jobs became available to anyone on the internet. So we have a much broader, the way, the means by which you can get a job has almost entirely gone through the internet and is available to anyone on the internet. So quite a change. The double-edged sword of that, though, of course, is that now you're competing with everyone in the world who's on the internet, so you have to be that much better. But at the time, I broke in by going in person to shows, showing my portfolio, and just kind of, I think it was the repetition, people sort of getting to know my name, and eventually the work getting good enough to get that first nibble. And by the way, once you're in, it's not that your career is made. That's just the starting point. You're not making that much those first few years. You're building a reputation, learning how to do the job. It really took me a long time to get to be on the projects at the level of artistry that I wanted to be. Sometimes I joke that I sucked for 20 years before I got anywhere.
That's, hey, you know what? Sometimes it's like when you struggle a little bit in life, like it teaches you the skills, right? To make it in life. But on that note, let me ask you, what was the biggest challenge you faced when you were trying to land your very first professional gig?
I think I was what I had, what I had going for me is the willpower to stick it out. Like I was not going to give up without a fight, and I was in it, in my heart until it was going to happen. So I was slow learning the skills that I needed to. Back then, you were sort of on your own. There wasn't the internet, and there wasn't YouTube with instructional videos, and none of that. I had to like go to the public library and find art books and, go through bad ones, trying to figure out on my own what to do. So although it took me a long time to gather the skills, I at least had the stick to itness to get through that. And I think that was my superpower. These days, I think it's real nice that we have opportunities like this, to network with people, or the internet to learn the skills in a much easier way. My daughter, for example, just on her own, goes on YouTube and finds instructionals, and I swear she's further along than I was at her age by a lot. So, but stick with it is a big point today.
If someone today wanted to break into comics and illustration, what would you tell them to maybe focus on first?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me this on Instagram, where I spend the most time on socials. And the thing I see happening with young artists that sort of messes them up a lot is they go very broad in their in what they choose to post on socials. So for example, on the same page you'll see some quick life drawings, some, character turnarounds, some comic book sketches, pages, it's a lot of different stuff at once. And that's the first mistake. The number one thing you need to do is be crystal clear about the job you're going for, and make sure your online presence is exactly that one thing to the best of your ability. So when someone like an editor happens upon your page, they go, "Oh, okay, this person's exactly what I need for exactly this role. I can see all these examples of it." And then it purely comes down to how strong the work is. But the first obstacle was your page has to display to a hire someone who's going to hire you that you're actually going for the job they're offering.
Back when you and I were wee lads, because we're around the same age, there were no such things as variant covers or store exclusives in the comic book world, right? It was just direct and newsstand. That's it. And those covers were usually drawn by the interior artists. And so in addition to your gorgeous cover artwork, you've done interior art for titles before, right?
That's true. That's how I started. Yeah.
Maybe you can walk us through, especially to the audience who may not be familiar with the comic industry, maybe you can walk us through how each one differs, interior art and cover art, and explain how you approach each one differently.
Sure. The economics of comics have changed a lot in the last 10, 15 years. As you said, it used to be that there was just one cover for the most part for every comic issue that came out. And now there are routinely 10, believe it or not, for a lot of comics. And for a new launch, you might see, I think the new Spider-Man Superman crossover, which is a major event in the comics right now, I think it's got 30 covers just for that one issue.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's great for cover artists. Lots of jobs. Happy to have that. But what is the difference between interior art and cover art? And going back to what I said before is you need to choose as a artist which of those you want to be. There are different skills. Your portfolio that you show online should reflect one or the other, but not probably not both. When you're doing cover art, that is about beautiful, lush illustration. That is, at the end of the day, marketing, right? Like you have all these levers you can pull to attract eyeballs, like grab attention, stand out from the crowd. That's what that game is about. And as an interior artist, it's a different thing. Absolutely, you still want to be splashy and exciting, and move the camera around like a film director. But ultimately, you're storytelling, and that's a different job completely. You're thinking about mood and lighting and emotion, and communicating what is happening and how the actors, as it were, feel in any given moment, and you're trying to do it with as much style as possible to make the readers come back month after month and excite them about what they're reading. As you say, they used to be one artist would do both, and now it's, I think, maybe a little more common where you get a dedicated cover artist who all they're going to do is focus on the covers, and then the interior will probably be handled by a different team. And probably mainly just because of the economics, those deluxe covers might have a better chance of drawing people in, and I think that's kind of where we are in the industry right now.
Yeah, that's really fascinating because, like you mentioned, sometimes you pick up a comic book and then you find out that there's 30 different variant covers, or even up to 100 different variant covers. I think was Transformers 1 like that? I think it had like 100 different covers.
Oh man, that might be an exception. Transformers 1 hit like a meteor and has been reprinted, I believe, 13 times. Like when you hear of something going back for a new printing, it's like it's pretty special if you get even one reprinting. But they're on their 13th and they're not stopping anytime soon. I, by the way, did a cover for the 10th reprinting of that issue.
That's right. And guys, like Catherine, my co-producer, can drop in some links for you guys to check out David's work. He has worked on the current run of Transformers. It was starting at issue number 25, I think. You had like the regular cover.
That's right. Yeah. I fell in love with that book when it first started as a reader. It was always the top of my stack. And then I got the opportunity to start doing some variants. After the variant covers in the teens, I took over main covers somehow with, I started main covers with 25, and we're going to continue hopefully well into the future. But it is a fabulous read. Robert Kirkman is writing right now. He's the Invincible and Walking Dead guy, if you didn't know. But absolutely fabulous title that embraces all those, unpredictable depths and real stakes that Invincible does. Like when you're reading the new Transformers book, unlike a children's cartoon, the characters can and will die at any time, and it is dark. It is a book for adults, and that's awesome.
Man, I tell you, Robert Kirkman, he's quite a writer. And speaking of writers, I just want to throw this out there. Do you remember back in San Diego Comic-Con of 2023? This is going back a ways. You were on I believe you were on a panel about Asian representation in the comic book industry.
Were you there? I remember that clearly, yeah.
No, I was not there. But somebody in the audience right now, writer Amy Linsamuth, is in the audience right now. Do you remember Amy?
Oh, kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Well, thank you for joining us so much. That's so cool. Good to hear from you again.
That's right.
Yeah, my good friend organizes that panel every year, and he was nice enough to invite me, as you say, in the 2023 edition.
Yep.
And I was just really honored because the talent he assembles every year on that panel is remarkable, and it underscores how many talented, powerful creators who happen to be Asian are out there, and maybe we don't know about them as much as we should.
That's right. Amy Linsamuth is right there in the audience. So chat, make sure you give her a follow. Incredible comic writer out there on the West Coast. Before we get into more of the comic stuff, I want to kind of rewind a little bit and talk about something most of your fans may not even know about. That being this 12-year-long career pivot in the video game industry. What led you to that transition?
Well, we were talking a little while ago about the economics of breaking into comics, and my first year, I'll be really honest, I was making $24,000, basically poverty wages, as an intern doing small projects, graphic novels for sub $100 a page. Really just getting my foot in the door, and I was happy to have my foot in the door, but it wasn't exactly paying the bills. And then the video game industry came a calling, and there was just a lot more money on the table, and we were starting a family at the time, and it just seemed like something I had to do. I had to take care of my family. And it's not like I didn't like video games. In fact, I love them, and I wanted to try that very much, and I stuck with it for a good long time. But I'm glad it happened that way. I wasn't expecting that career pivot, but it happened, and I ended up learning essential coloring painting skills that we already talked about, fundamentally changed how I draw, who I am as an artist, and I think I'd be in a much worse place if I hadn't done that. I think I would have been still grinding away at just being a basic penciler, maybe never would have gotten anywhere special. So I'm really grateful that fate happened to force me into learning new skills that pushed me into a more interesting place artistically. And I guess maybe the lesson might be you have to be open to expanding your horizons. And as an artist, it almost the most important thing you can do, more than your basic fundamental skills, is standing out. Number one must be standing out stylistically. You have to be different, unique, especially in a sea of AI slop nowadays. You need to offer something different to the audience that does not exist anywhere else, and they can only come to you for it. So you think of artists like Peach Momoko or Scotty Young, or that they're all over the map stylistically and how they approach art, but they are the memorable ones. They're the ones that form fan bases, and that is ultimately what you as a commercial artist need to do.
Speaking of fan bases, this question comes in from Dano, who asks, would you ever consider starting like an official fan club site?
Hmm. Well, sure. Never say never, right? I These days I find myself so overloaded with work that it's hard to do anything else, and I need to, for my own health, like scale back. That's sort of my mission right now, is to take a little bit less. But it's really hard when every dream you had when you were 13 years old, like dreaming of the day when you could do professional art, when those things are hitting, it's very hard to say no. So for now, I have to fulfill those dreams. If someone's going to offer covers on an Emma Frost book or magic cards or whatever it is, like those are literally what I live for. So I got to say yes. But someday it'll slow down. I will make it slow down. I'll have checked the boxes, and then we can talk about a YouTube channel, or I'll do my own graphic novel, or I'll do a Patreon, or who knows. There's a lot of different ways to go.
Do you actually ever say no to a project? Like, has something ever come across your desk?
Constantly.
Really?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's changed so much in the last few years. So, at the beginning of your career, and just for a reference, guys, I'm almost 50. I'm in my late 40s, and when I was first starting out, 20 years ago, let's say, um, any opportunity at all, someone giving you money for art was so unbelievably special. You'll do it, and you'll be happy for it. So I took everything that came across my desk. 20 years later, I find that there are too many things you know, on on offer, and that is amazing to me. Like, I'm absolutely honored that people ask that much, but I have the luxury and the great fortune to be able to pick and choose. And so I am just going where my heart is, right now. Like, X-Men is the reason I got into comics in the first place. So main covers on X-Men, yes, please. I started playing Magic back in Revised, like a year into it, or less. So yes, please. That's kind of how I pick right now. But some of the stuff I turned down is really good. Like, it would be like fabulous projects that I would have been glad to have years ago.
The comic book industry can be very controversial. There's a lot of cover art out there that is for a different audience, so to speak, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, David. Like, I've never seen your work like in that capacity. You know what I mean? Like, I've never seen you like. I know you did like a cover for Gun Honey, right? But like, it wasn't one of the NSFW covers for Gun Honey, right?
Very, very insightful. Yeah, let me talk about this. This is a strategic choice that you have to make as an artist. When you're in that early part of your career, someone will come along at some point and go, "Will you do topless art or not safe for work art?" And you might be tempted, to do uh, that because there's a paycheck, right? However, when you do that, you are signing up for that to be the only kind of work you will probably ever get going forward. It can be a real weight hung around your neck. I know a lot of artists who are really talented and they've gone that route, and then the major publishers go and look at their stuff and they are uneasy about the content, and so they don't get hired. Sometimes it can hold them back from getting hired by the major publishers for decades. So my advice to any young person who wants to become a commercial artist is don't take those jobs. Make sure your artwork is PG-13. Can it be sexy? Absolutely. That's a major selling point. That's a tool I use all the time in marketing cover artwork. But there's a line, right? A respectful line. And I would say strategically, you shouldn't cross it.
Yeah, and I think you bring up an excellent point because, as a designer, as an illustrator, as whatever type of creative you are, you have to have those ethics, right? You have to have those parameters that, reflect your life. And, don't let anybody ever pressure you into doing something that's outside of that, because it's just not worth it. I know that is, to hear that news is kind of depressing to Princess because she likes some of those scandalous covers. Shout out to Princess in the audience there. But
I'll just add, like, a lot of people make a perfectly awesome living doing just not safe for work art. And I follow lots of people like that, and I like that stuff sometimes. But if your goal is to work for Marvel or DC or a mainstream company, it will hold you back. So you just kind of have to choose what career path you're going down. And this is turning into a theme of this episode. Like how you present yourself in terms of your content. We've talked about in a couple different angles now, but that ultimately is a really important way that you handle your career strategically as an artist.
On those jobs or that work that you don't want to do, or maybe you don't even have the bandwidth to do, like you alluded to earlier, do you refer those projects out to people, other artists maybe that you know?
No, but it's not that I'm trying to gatekeep. One of two things happens. Either it's Marvel or DC, right? And they'll be like, "Hey, do you want to work on this?" And I will say, "Oh, it'd be cool, but I don't have time." They have a much bigger Rolodex. They already have a plan of the next 10 artists they'll ask. They don't need me to recommend. Or alternatively, let's say it's smaller press and they go, "Hey, will you work on this?" And then sometimes they will actually ask that, "Who can you recommend?" And then I have to answer. I don't know. I really have no idea because my schedule, I know what I'm doing, but I have no idea what anybody else in the industry is doing. It's those folks have to go approach the artists that they like and ask. There's no way I would know. It might be because I kind of keep to myself and I'm a bit of a lone wolf. I don't talk to other artists that much and find out what they're working on today. But at the end of the day, I just don't know what they're doing.
Hmm. Are there any some like favorite up and coming artists that you're keeping an eye on or that you're impressed by?
Oh boy, up and coming might be a stretch, but the people I'm so impressed by right now and who I feel, I'm looking at for inspiration and things to learn are folks like Dan Mora, who will be very familiar to folks right now. He draws beautifully, cover quality on the interior pages. That's remarkable, and is really fast. And along in the same exact boat, I would put two others who are Pepe Larraz and Jorge Jimenez. All three of those gentlemen are really top notch quality, really exciting interior work that is somehow cover quality, and they can turn around monthly books. It's absolutely remarkable. I don't know how they do it, but that's when I look at that stuff, I'm studying it like, how did they do this quickly?
Yeah, because it's phenomenal how fast some of these cover artists are pumping out work. And like you mentioned,
Right.
Pepe Larraz and Dan Mora. I'm not as familiar with the third person you mentioned, but I know that their interior art. I mean, it's like they're working on something all the time. Like it's just
Yeah.
phenomenal.
In some cases, they're turning around 2 or 3 books a month.
Yeah.
I think it's a level of genius that most people just won't be able to do. Um, but they have really, unlocked the secret of doing it.
When you are assigned a cover, how does that
Mhm.
process typically begin? Where does it start?
Okay, sure. So, at this point, what'll happen is an editor from whatever company I'm working for will reach out, and they'll say and it'll depend, right? If it's a main cover, like a storytelling focused A cover, they might call it. They'll say, okay, this is what's happening in the issue. These are the themes. These are some important scenes. Every once in a while, they give you the full script, but that's not strictly necessary. And they'll want to see a handful of sketches, 3 to 5 of ideas that demonstrate that. Um, Also, what might happen is if it's not an A cover, say it's a variant cover or something like that, then it's a little bit more of a evergreen or portrait style, beauty shot, action shot of the character, or it's a little more open ended, doesn't have to, depict a certain story. So I do both, and I like both. They're both interesting challenges on their own. But once you have that, uh, you know, kickoff, I'll sit there and I'll try to think about the character. Being a comic reader for decades helped me understand the characters on a personal level, so I can kind of imagine things that they might do or feel true to them, and I'll lean on that and let it help inspire the ideas. And sitting there doing the sketches is when that all happens. I can't predict what's going to happen until I actually sit down and do it. I'll send the sketches back. They'll pick one, and then we'll take that to final. And it's ironic, but working for the big companies, maybe we've created a shorthand over the years or something, but you don't get a lot of notes on those. Those tend to go pretty smoothly. It's the smaller outfits where they will get in your face and ask for changes a little more often. Ironically,
Really? Huh.
yeah, is that weird?
That is weird because I would imagine that the Marvel and DC, they have these established characters that there's like extreme parameters, right?
You would think so.
Well, like on that note, how do you balance creativity with constraints if you have to work within those limitations?
Well, I mean, I don't feel constraints too much. That's not really a something feel like I'm fighting with at all. Um, Usually, there's a theme, there are parameters, but I don't feel like it's a constraint. And we were talking about like how to avoid over sexualizing characters, for example. I don't feel like that's a restraint either. I know that line very well at this point, and I know how to not cross it. So I don't know. I feel kind of comfortable in the mold that we're in right now. And then it just is about creativity, right? Like, if anything, how can I break the constraints? How can I come up with something we haven't seen for a while or ever for such and such character? How can I make something special and stand out and different?
If you're unfamiliar with David Nakayama's work, he has a unique style, and he's worked on some unique characters that you will all recognize. Ashwara asked this question, says that your character poses feel very dynamic. How do you plan the pose and composition to make it feel so alive?
Oh, thank you for saying that. I actually feel like that's something I could continue to get better on, but I'll tell you the secret. There was this one specific moment that I'll never forget, and it comes from Jim Lee, who is one of our living legends, greatest of all time, comic book artists. And he said, the secret to action, he had this in a video that I saw at comic school 20 years ago. He said the secret to action is imbalance. So if you can imagine the centers of mass in your rib cage and your pelvis, if they're aligned straight up and down vertically, that's balanced. You're not going to fall over, you're standing, you're stable. It's the opposite of being in motion and the opposite of action. Now, if you want to put the character in motion, move those centers of mass apart as far as possible. So 45 degrees is pretty good, but you can even make that fully horizontal, where the character is literally moving sideways, parallel to the ground. And that's the maximum amount of action, right? Like they couldn't be more unbalanced. They would fall in that scenario. So you imagine a Wolverine pose. Maybe you can picture Jim Lee's Wolverine as I say it. Wolverine's always leaping almost horizontally to the ground, or something like that. And it all comes down to making those centers of mass unaligned. So every time I'm thinking about how do I make an action shot, I'm like, okay, number one thing I got to do is have the character leaning over or, in that state of motion.
Wow, it's fascinating. See, you guys are hearing all of the secrets straight from the source. To those of you who are just tuning in, we are speaking with David Nakayama, famous comic book artist. Lots of great information in this conversation tonight. Speaking of, your characters, one of the things that Dano in the audience focused on and has a question about is the facial expressions of the characters. How do you create those to be so accurate?
Oh, thanks for asking, Dano. I think we were chatting on Instagram the other day about this, so thanks for joining us. Okay, this is my secret about how to do facial expressions. So when you are an artist doing comic book characters or any human illustration, guess what? You're also an actor. So you have to put on your acting cap and put yourself in the shoes of your character and feel what they're feeling. Jim Lee does this better than every artist out there. It's so clear what the characters are feeling in any given moment. It's remarkable. But I do my best version of it. And, while you're thinking that, it is helpful to have a mirror by your desk or to take a photo of yourself doing either the pose or the facial expression uh, as a way to help get you there. Like I do this all the time. I'm trying to imagine the intensity Wolverine's face has got when he's like, I'm gonna attack or whatever, or the fear of some character in danger. So you have to be able to feel it first, get a picture of it, and then translate that to the page, however that works for you. I don't copy paste or draw over photos or anything like that. I use it as an inspiration, but I'm sure there are some people that I don't know, photo bash photos themselves. Who knows? There are lots of ways to get there, but that's what I do. I create inspirational references.
That's amazing. In fact, Mickey in the audience says, I think character animators do that too. They use their faces and record their
Totally.
bodies. Yeah. So,
Oh man, when I worked for the game company, I absolutely loved watching the animators work. And what they will do is they will literally take videos of themselves doing the motion. Exactly like it's a big staff strike that the character is doing. So they'll act it out fully, and that's amazing. It's exactly what I'm talking about in motion. But the idea is the same, right? It's like you have to feel it. You are acting it out. It's you actually doing the thing.
this question comes in from Digital Monkey, who asks, how did you develop your own style? Did you study other artists first? And how did you know that certain things were working, like your latex gloss effect?
Oh, thank you for mentioning it.
Yeah, that
My
is,
favorite little trick.
yes.
That is the cherry on top of my artistic style sundae. um, yeah, so style. Style is really interesting. One way to think about it is that well, let me put it this way. There is no such thing as a fully original style. Like, just go ahead and accept the fact that everybody has done everything at some point. So, if that's true, then what happens is what makes you unique, right? And what it's going to be is your particular mix of everything else that has already been there. So, what do I mean? Like, my particular mix, I know, is one part digital art, one part traditional comic book line art, one part, Adam Hughes slash J. Scott Campbell draftsmanship, somewhere in that mix. So it will automatically be your favorite artist. Like, what looks good to you, what appeals to you. You're going to look at that, study it, internalize it, and then it'll all mix together automatically in your brain as you practice. And unusual things will combine. Like, you might be the first person in history that thought both Mike Mignola and Scotty Young were awesome, and then somehow you combined elements of both and made your own brand new style. That's I think the secret. You have to mix together interesting bits that you collect from all over your own fandom and pull them into some kind of new whole.
When you are working for comic publishers, do you set your own rate for your work, or is there just one set price or industry standard that comes from places like Marvel or DC or the indies?
Yeah, rate is tricky. The way it works with the big companies is when you first come in, they have a board behind the scenes that works it out. They make some kind of judgment call about what the work is worth and offer you that rate. And then maybe over time you can ask to have it raised, although that is difficult and rare. Um, I have over the years managed to get up to a certain rate that I'm okay with, but if we're going to be really honest, it is not the biggest bucket of my annual income. So it's nice, it's good to have, but I do much more business at conventions, for example. Um, when I sign or sell books, when I do a whatnot show, something like that. When I, based on the strength of the comic work, get some sort of cool job in video games. There's more money, realistically, outside of the comic book industry's page rate. That's just how it is. You're not going to make a fortune doing the pages by themselves. Now, that's don't be discouraged by it because there are all these other things that open up, right? Like, let's say you're doing a book for Marvel and you're doing the interiors. I don't get this, but if you were doing the interiors and the book does well, now you're talking about royalties, right? That's another income stream that you didn't have to do any extra work for. It's just, on top of the page rate, you got this other line of revenue. My other lines of revenue happen to be different because I don't do interiors, but I can take my covers and sell them signed over the internet or show up at conventions, or maybe I make a print, or recently we put out a hardcover art book with Clover Press. Um, so I didn't necessarily have to do any new work, but it was a new way to sell that existing work, if that makes sense. So that's going to be different for everybody. Oh, original art obviously is a huge alternate revenue stream. Let's say you're a cover artist. The best thing you could do is do those covers by hand and then sell it to the collector's market. There's a lot more money in an original than there is in the actual page rate. So just some examples of how your total yearly income might be different depending on how you uh, can strategically um, use and reuse what you've worked on.
Yeah, that's the original art. I'm definitely seeing a lot more of that in recent years, like really start to be promoted from the original artist, which is great
It's
because,
great.
yeah, I mean, having that one of a kind piece of artwork is, I mean, how cool is that? Do you ever get copies of your own work or do you have to buy them yourself?
I do both. So the contractually, your work for hire agreement for the big companies means they're going to send you some copies. Just a handful for most for some publishers, but I have one publisher that sends me 30 copies, every month of the thing I do, and that's above and beyond. But I'm glad to have them. I also, because you cannot predict how they're going to show up in the mail, I also have a standing poll on my own stuff at my local comic book store, just so I have at least one clean copy of everything I do.
How about that, everybody? David goes to his local comic book store. It's amazing. It's
I love.
amazing.
Oh man, if you're not, who is a comic artist that doesn't love and read comics? I feel like that would be weird, right? Like, it's not. You don't get into comics because you're like trying to be rich, Like, if the goal is to be rich, like you go into finance or something, or law school or something. If you go into comics or commercial art, it's because you want to make a living doing the thing that you love, and you would have to do. Your heart tells you you have to do it. So yeah, I'd be shocked if there are any pros out there that do not like comics, do not read comics. That would be weird.
Well, you touched on comic conventions being such a big part of the artist. What do you enjoy most about meeting fans and collectors in person?
Oh, there's so many great things. Comic conventions are the best thing in the world. It's one of the things I feel like I live for. Where to start? One thing is when you're an artist, you spend most of your time sitting quietly at your desk by yourself in a room all day, every day. And the exact opposite of that is when you go to a comic convention and you meet actual real people in the real world who it's to this day it surprises me. Wow, they love the work. They're excited or sometimes nervous to meet you. They like it that much. They purchased your stuff with their money. It's like it's so flattering, and it's like it continues to blow me away to this day. So all I want to do is be able to look that person in the face and say thank you. Like thank you for supporting my work. I could not do this job that I love without you guys supporting this work. So I love that interaction. They feel good too because like the artist that they're meeting is grateful, for that. So it's a really nice exchange for both parties. I feel like, and then also it's nice to meet peers in the industry. Like, oh man, Dan Moore, he's amazing. Maybe I'll meet him at New York Comic Con or something like that. That's really cool. Um, yeah, there are many other. Oh, here's another thing I love about comic shows. Uh, I have two kids, and you'll go to school functions or something, and you'll talk with other parents, and then for me, I find like I very quickly find that I have nothing in common with these people. We really don't have that much to talk about. I'm often in my own weird little art space, and no one understands me there, right? But if I go to a comic store, I can mention Doctor Who, and everyone knows what that is, and we have a shorthand, and you know it. You know that everyone in that room is going to be able to understand the stuff you like right off the bat, and you can have deep conversations about the stuff you like. That's neat, right? That is really special to be in a room full of sometimes tens of thousands of people who are all your people. I love that so much.
That's great. Well, let's get into social media because obviously that's really big for artists and it lets them personally connect with their fans. And audience, I know this for a fact. David personally replies to every comment you leave him on Instagram. So
It's true.
so be nice, but it is uncanny. Where did this superpower of approachability come from, David? Because I'll be honest, I rarely see the same thing from other comic book artists.
It's just natural. I would feel bad if I didn't, right? Like, if someone is taking the time to say, I like your work, I have to say thank you. Like that does mean something to me. And and then over time, you start to feel like the person on the other end of that handle. There are people who I love chatting with. They'll routinely pop into my post and leave a nice comment, and then it'll turn into a nice conversation about something random, and I love that. It's a little bit like a Comic Con. um, and then later on, I sort of realize that accidentally it's good policy, it's good marketing, right? Like if I'm out there on social media sharing the work, reminding people that it's about to come out, keeping it high in their mind, they're going to be more likely to go into the store and take a chance on you and pick up your stuff, right? So I think it helps build the audience, helps sell more copies of comics. It's a win for everybody. And so when artists don't do it, then I feel like the opposite happens, right? Like the artist isn't that excited about their own work, or it feels like it, and the audience doesn't know about it, doesn't think to pick it up. It has the like a negative effect. So from both the social wanting to say thank you point of view, and then also like reminding people that the work is there and about to come out, it's good marketing, right?
Yeah, and part of good marketing is also developing that personal brand, which as creative people, we know how difficult that is. And at the heart of it all is this personal logo. And I know that you, David, have got a very recognizable one.
Thanks.
I know you have graphic design training in your blood, but how did that DNA logo concept first originate? Was that your first idea, or did it take a while to get there?
It took a minute. If you go back way to the beginning of my career, like 2010s, I was using a different mark, and let's be honest, it was a little bit of a rip off of Frank Cho's signature. It had a dot on either side of the initials. I couldn't think of anything better at the time, but I never felt good about it. I always felt like it was kind of a blah logo, and I'm thinking about the artists that I love the most for their logo. For example, Adam Hughes is AH apostrophe. So, right? How
Mm-hmm.
awesome is that? So
Yeah.
perfect and obvious if you're Adam Hughes. Or Joe Madureira is of course mad. There's a guy named Ryan Stegman who has a little Stegosaurus cartoon kind of over his signature. See, and I started to think that's great. Like those are all really memorable. And if in this line of work, it's not like you can put out one great piece and then all of a sudden you have a fan base. I actually think it takes 10, 20, 40 exposures of a person's artwork to even like for the viewer to even start to make that connection that that is an artist that they like. You know what I'm saying? It takes repeated exposure. And so to have a memorable mark helps that process. It helps it stick in the person's mind. Therefore, is incredibly important as a marketing tool. How did I get to my thing? I looked to that Adam Hughes or Joe Madureira inspiration, and I was like, what can I do with my own initials? And when your name is David Nakayama, DNA, right? Pretty much obvious. Great way to go. I put a little double helix symbol next to it. Good to go. And I've never changed it since.
This one comes from Catherine, my show producer here. What's one of the most commonly misunderstood things about your work industry?
Well, the first thing that comes to my head is that you have to understand what you're getting into, from an economic point of view, right? Art school can cost tens of thousands of dollars, and you may or may not get a job after that. Once you even crack the industry, you're going to be making poverty wages, like I did in the beginning. It will take time. How do you get from that place to I can support myself and my family on the work that I do? And it requires knowing the industry and knowing what the jobs are, what is a marketable style, how to capitalize on the art that you do, even when the page rate isn't, the biggest ticket in the group. Um, there's a lot of financial planning that underlies this career that I didn't know about at all when I got into it. I sort of figured it out along the way. But for someone new, if I was instructing one of my children, for example, about how they should plan it, that's the kind of stuff I'd be talking about. Like, be careful the school that you go to. Don't put yourself in a huge amount of debt if you're not confident that you're going to get through that and be able to get a job at the end. What are the plans you have to make enough money to support yourself?
Yeah, and I know that you went to the Kubert School of Art. That was one of the places you went to, right?
So here's my embarrassing story about school. Right, I went to a 4-year university and I got a degree in what they call visual communications, so marketing, illustration, graphic design. And there was no hope in a million years that I was getting a job after that experience. I was nowhere near. I wasn't good enough for any industry. So I went to the Kubert School for 2 more years, trying to get a little closer to that comic goal. Started getting nibbles after that, but it still took another several years interning before I was really, before Marvel happened, before it was really going. So I don't know if I'm representative, but that if you tally that all up, that's about 10 years before going from I'm a student, getting started, even as committed as I was as a student, to I have the job I want and I'm doing okay.
Yeah, it takes a while. I know I'm impatient and I hate waiting, but sometimes in this industry, you just have to be patient, right? It's like I said, it's talent, timing, and tenacity.
Yeah.
Do you offer online classes, or is it something you've ever thought about?
It's almost happened a couple of times. These you see these online companies, they'll do video courses, and we've almost done it a couple of times, but it's fallen through for this, that, or the other reason. And these days, I feel like there's not enough time to make it happen. And personally, I've started to feel a real urge to write and draw my own comic series. So there might have been a time when my focus could have included an online course, but I think I'm more interested in making a comic, which is going to be so time consuming. It'll take over my life. But I've done teaching in the past, and I've enjoyed it. So I think that'll happen sometime. In the meantime, I can point people toward. I have a YouTube page, believe it or not, and I don't update it that much, but it has some time lapse videos of me doing some X-Men covers, start to finish. And there's no VO. It's sped up, but you can see every move that I'm making in Photoshop. If you know your way around Photoshop, you can see exactly what I'm doing. That's a free resource if you're interested. And there have been a few times when I did articles for magazines like Imagine FX, where I actually describe in my own words what I'm doing each step along the way. So if you go back through their back issues, there are 2 or 3 issues where you can get that kind of material.
Speaking of Adobe stuff, I have to ask it
Yeah,
because this is
please.
an Adobe sponsored podcast. What is your go-to Adobe tool?
Well, funny you should ask. As a matter of fact, I have exclusively used Photoshop all through my career since I was a student. I learned Photoshop muscle memory, and over the decades, I have very fast. My left hand will be doing the hotkeys. I don't even have to look. I know exactly where it is, and my right hand is drawing. And it works perfectly for me. Photoshop is a very powerful program that does everything I want it to do. It still does things that other programs that it competes with cannot do. And so, for those 2 reasons, both the muscle memory and it remaining the most powerful program I know of to do what I want to do, that remains my software of choice.
Hmm. Within Photoshop, are there like some hacks and tips that you could offer that maybe it took you a while to figure out, and then once you realized it, you're like, aha, I wish everyone knew this secret?
Hmm. I don't know if that's the case. I feel like it's more, if anything, it's that people think in order to be a great artist, you need 10,000 brushes or something like that. And that's not really true. I find that I only really need about five. But the five are really important. And one Photoshop thing that works really well is being able to make custom brushes. So I have definitely made a few that save me a lot of time and that I use regularly. So that's one thing. Make custom brushes for what you want to do. It's going to be different for every person. I have one that makes metal flecks that I use on overlay mode all the time. I have another one that does foliage. That one's really helpful. It's, for example, I also absolutely love liquify in Photoshop. That is like part of how I work, to the point where it's hard for me to enjoy drawing by hand now because I don't have it. Like
Wow.
I I rely for my style on making little pushes and pulls here and there, constantly moving the artwork inch by inch toward what I have in my head. I am unfortunately not someone that the first line that goes down is the final line. It takes me a little while to get there.
Where do you see the comic book industry evolving in the next few years? Because it has certainly changed, but where do you see it evolving?
As long as I've been reading comics, there have always been articles predicting the doom of comics. Like ever since it went to the direct market, where it used to be when I was a kid, you would go to 7-Eleven, they would have comics on the newsstand. That's how old I am. But now you can only buy comics from the actual store, and so it sort of, in order to buy comics, you have to seek it out. That's a problem. Another issue is that the people reading comics are trending a little older. So the two biggest problems, therefore, are distribution and um, creating a new audience. The best thing you could say for comics right now, trying to approach that, is DC Comics and to a lesser extent Marvel Comics have these wonderful digest size editions in full color for a bargain price. DC Compact comics are $10 for a full graphic novel in full color. It's amazing. It's the same price or better than manga and a much better looking package. That's an unbeatable deal, and they're very popular. So yeah, DC Compact Comics is the way to go. That's the future. Um, Marvel has a similar thing for $15, but very similar value proposition. How do we get to manga though, right? Like way more manga is being sold even in the US than comics. And I think the compact editions are a step in that direction. But we have to keep the price point low, the distribution channels high, like more bookstores, ideally Walmart and Target, that kind of thing at that price point. Um, and I think it's got to be more than superheroes. Like part of manga's appeal is that you have comics directed at boy and girl audiences. That's interesting, but also can be any genre in the world. There are comics about, rollerblading or, like name anything you want. But in American comics, we're only just now breaking out of the all superheroes all the time convention. So I think, boiling it all down, diversity, distribution, price point, competing with manga. That's what we need to do.
Did you ever have a mentor at any point in your career?
Yeah, many times. Sometimes that mentor didn't know they were my mentor, but people like J. Scott Campbell, this is how insane I am. I would go to comic shows and I would buy all their comics, and I would literally cut the covers off the comic and make my own art book in an Itoya folder. And so I would have this study reference that I could go through when I was a student and just like absolutely try to absorb everything I could from in particular Campbell and Adam Hughes. I think of them as my mentors, and I've told them both so. I even got J. Scott Campbell, believe it or not, to write the foreword in my art book. That's how much it meant to me. Um, and then another thing I have to say is when I was an intern, when I was trying to get that first job, I got the really good fortune to work in Mark Silvestri's image studio in Culver City, California. It's called Top Cow. They're the publishers of Witchblade and The Darkness, if you've heard of those. And Mark himself is a legendary X-Men artist and just a fabulous draftsman who also happens to be a fabulous teacher. Like, it's no accident that people that you would know, like Michael Turner, like David Finch, like Tyler Kirkham, Mike Choi, like a lot of big names now, all at one time were interns with Mark Silvestri. So all credit to Mark Silvestri for helping us refine our art.
Yeah, that's amazing. And speaking of David's art book, it's called The Marvel Art of David Nakayama, published by Clover Press. Check that one out. It features a foreword by J. Scott Campbell, like you mentioned. We talked about you having mentors, but would you ever consider becoming a mentor to somebody else?
I would, time allowing, and actually, like just a few years ago, I think I mentioned to you offline that I actually did an internship with Adobe not that long ago, where I gave advice to a young woman who was coming up and helped her with some career and style questions. So I would consider doing that. This year is not like right now is tough to add anything else to the schedule. I'm barely keeping afloat, but like I mentioned, I loved being a teacher in the past, and I would absolutely consider doing that again at some point.
Now, if you are new to the Adobe Creative Career Discord, I'd like to take a moment to share one of the coolest things we're working on right now, and that would be the Adobe Creative Apprenticeship Program. This program connects aspiring creative people like you with top creative companies providing the actual training and experience that you need, which also looks amazing on a resume. Think of it like the ultimate internship meets mentorship opportunity. But wait, that's not all. You see, there is another aspect to the program, and it's called commissioned projects. This is where you can get even more experience working on an actual paid project with Adobe. Yes, that's right, Adobe as your first client. Seriously. The details on the Creative Apprenticeship Program, the commissioned projects, and more incredible career resources can all be found at behance.net/resources. That's behance.net/resources. Like you mentioned, you are busy. It is the beginning of con season. What events are you going to be at in the next month or so?
As a matter of fact, this coming Monday, I'm getting on a plane for my first ever doubleheader back-to-back weekend conventions. So it's going to be next week. We'll be at MegaCon from Wednesday through Sunday, the whole week. Starting with some whatnot shows before the show. We'll be at the pre-show. We'll be there all 4 days. And then the very next weekend, I'll be staying on the mainland and traveling to Chicago for C2E2, which is a fabulous top 4 show to me. Delighted to be back. Missed it last year, so I'm back after 2 years and couldn't be more excited to return. So please see me at MegaCon in Orlando or C2E2 in Chicago the following week. And then later in the season, it'll be San Diego and finally New York Comic Con, which might be my favorite show in the universe.
New York Comic Con, huh? Interesting.
It's lovely. I love that show.
That is that's in my neck of the woods. Maybe I'll have to get up there to attend my very first Comic Con.
Come see us. Oh my goodness, we'd love to see you.
Yeah, well, look, if you're listening to this program and you're planning to attend one of these, go up to David's table, tell him that you heard him on Spotlight Sessions with the Adobe crew tonight, and bring some of that Adobe love.
How about this? I'll tell you what. If someone says that to me, I will give you a free signed print. How about that?
Whoa!
If you were actually here, you will get a freebie.
Whoa, there we go, chat. You heard it first. If you're here at the live session and you see David Nakayama at one of these events, he'll give you a free print. And to those of you listening on demand, shame on you. That's why you need to come live to the event as it's being recorded right here, right now. That's right. That's awesome. Well, look, what is the best way for people to follow or reach out to you post-show? Do you have a preference?
I kind of am on Instagram constantly. Like if you post a comment and tag me in any way on Instagram, I'm very easy to find. I'm there. It's sort of like my little break time is that's what I'll go do. But I'm also on Blue Sky and I'm also on Threads and also on Facebook. So those are my four, but particularly Instagram. I'm very easy to find on any of those.
So there you have it, audience. Ways to get in touch with David Nakayama. You heard it tonight from him, the man, the myth, the legend. I wish we had more time, but we don't. But we'll have to have him back on. This is a great conversation, David. I want to thank you for joining us tonight to discuss your incredible career journey. Be sure to connect with David on his website, davidnakayama.com. Check out his work on Instagram or ArtStation. He mentioned the other ones he's on. If you enjoyed this program, catch all the latest updates for the next Spotlight sessions and all the exciting content we have here in the Adobe Creative Career Discord by following the upcoming events calendar at the top of the server so you can see what's coming next. I also want to thank my co-producer, Catherine Chu, Lisa Temple, moderators Elizabeth Mock and Justin Roy, and the entire Adobe crew for sponsoring this program and helping to bring it alive. And thank you, Discord community, and to everyone who tuned in to listen to me, your host, Justin Bamforth. You can always catch me on Discord, LinkedIn, or over on my website, justinbamforth.com. Until next time, everyone, keep creating and take care.
Appreciate you having me.
For more conversations with creative professionals, subscribe to the Spotlight Sessions podcast or check out the Adobe Creative Career Discord. Links are posted in the show notes.